Yeah, Starry. Some great. What? Starry, some bleeding great news today. What happened? You know your man, Sheridan, the shill. How do you know he's a shill? Because I have a sense for these things. I just know, He lost his social media account. Nah, that bastard. But isn't that just one more attack on free speech? He wasn't putting out free speech. He was shilling for the man. I'm glad someone finally grasped him out and shut him down. But you only said last week that all speech should be recognised. Within reason, okay? Well, what reason? If it pisses me off, it has to stop. But I'm glad he's gone. I'm not. Those others are not either. Well, you should be. You see, he's a disinformation expert. And everyone's like that to you. Anyway, you have some fucking nerve, I have to say. You grassed out Paddy Callahan to the social welfare when he bought a new BMW while he was on the dole. That wasn't grassing out. It was. You went down to the bleeding social welfare office with photographs of his new car and everything. I was doing me duty, me patriotic duty. How? He was taken from the state. But you sell drugs and everything while you're on the dole. That's different. I'm a bleeding shaman. Do you understand? I'm doing a spiritual service to the community. Look, there's days I just don't understand you at all. I just don't. Like, you're a bleeding walking contradiction. Nothing you say makes sense. Nothing. Well, anyway, I went on holidays last week. Oh yeah, on the dole again. Right, where'd you get the money for that? I told you I'm a shaman and I sell healing plants. I don't think salvia is a healing plant, and I'm pretty sure crack isn't either. Oh, you're a shill as well. That's what's wrong with you. Anyway, where'd you go? I went to Paris in France. Oh, that's very nice, isn't it? Loads of riots there, isn't there? Now you're sitting there fine. Yeah, all the riots and everything. Well, I didn't go there for that. What'd you go for? It's evidence of mud flood. What? Mud flood. What's mud flood? You see, you're ignorant, right? You're ignorant. You don't fully understand. Go to Reptilian Resistance 2012 channel. There's a video on it called Mud Flood and the Jew Man. What? Yeah, and it shows how 200 years ago, right? Like the world is only 200 years old. Well, what about dinosaurs? They never existed, right? Dinosaurs never existed. They're invented, right? What? What about the big bones and everything? They're all made of plaster. Look, listen to me, right? The world is only 200 years old, right? Well, humans are only 200 years old, right? Oh, Jesus, go on then. And they erased history, right? They erased all history. So you think that like Julius Caesar and Napoleon Bonaparte, those fellas in ancient Greece and Mesopotamia, like them and Albert Einstein, right? You think that they existed hundreds of years ago, but they didn't, right? Because they don't exist at all. What? No, you see, they erased mankind with mud flood. They washed mud over the planet. How is it possible? This planet is huge, so you can cover it all in mud. Oh, it's dead easy, right? It's dead easy. They just they had trucks, right? And they just put mud into the trucks and they poured it on everybody. How many trucks did they have? Oh, about 50. But your man, O'Callaghan Haulage down the road, he has 70 trucks and he can't even fill a fucking pothole. How are you supposed to cover the world in mud flood? You see, this is your reptilian mind programmed by the satanic pedophiles, and they have you under the assumption that everything you see on the media is all true. Everything you learn, everything you see with your own eyes is true. So what's true? Well, nothing you believe in. But you get your information from like stupid channels like Reptilian Resistance 2012. That is the real me. How many years have I been telling you about that channel? Oh, too fucking many. That's thick of it. So they covered the earth in mud, right? Where's the mud now? You see the way buildings are 10 stories high? If you look at them, right, they're really 13 stories high. The basements were once at ground level. And they have windows in them. Most basements I've been in haven't had windows in them because the mud flooders blocked up the windows. If you were to go in those, take the plaster off those walls, right? And you were to take them, you would find bricked up window openings. If you open them up, right, you will find people who have been frozen in the mud and are trying to get in the window going, "Ah, Jesus, fucking help me, I'm being modificated by the mud flood." Did you ever see that place, Venus? The planet? No, in Italy, Venus. Venus in Italy? Yeah, statue. No, it's a town, you stupid gobshite. It's a town with a volcano. You mean Vesuvius? Yeah, Venus, right? In this, whatever it's called, right? Pompeii. Look, don't be confusing the matter. You see, that's how your mind is distorted. That and the gin in your hole, the dingin in your hole. But okay, you ever see all the bastards all there? They're all frozen in mud. Well, if you dig down all over the world, you find them. They were mud flooded, and they had the true knowledge of humanity, which is what? That humanity is only around 200 years old. That this is even stupider than the flat earth thing. The earth is flat, and the mud flood happened, and you've got a dingin in your hole. I just don't know why. I just don't know why I have anything to do with you anymore. Because you have no other friends. Yeah, because I'm fucking friends with you. Look, brother. Deco. We'll fight the satanic pedophiles together. Satanic pedophiles. When you get the dingin out of your hole, that is. Satanic pedophiles. And we'll expose things for what they are. And that's why it's good news that your man Sheridan the Shill has been shut down. He's out of business. Truth comes forward. Light me a spliff so I may celebrate the demise of the enemy. Do you hear something? No. You don't hear that? What? Something's coming from the distance. Oh no, he's back! Good evening, good morning, good night, good God, bon diam, bon whatever, in whatever language you speak or don't. Welcome back to the early spring 2020 Velocity of Now with me, your host, Thomas Sheridan. I know it's been a very long time, but I've been doing an awful lot of things. I've been doing a lot of travelling around. I've been all over the place, getting a lot of footage, and basically observing this high strangeness which is unfolding in this world at the moment. And basically, if today's show is to have a theme, this is what it is. And about anything can happen over the next couple of hours. Anyway, I hope you're all keeping good, and I hope you had a nice Christmas. It was a very kind of strange time. A lot of people I know died, and they weren't old or anything like that or anything. There was one lady, a friend down in Cork. I'd been spending a decade talking to her on my Facebook, and she died sadly, apparently in her sleep, of a brain aneurysm, and she wasn't even 40. And she just met a nice fella and everything, and it's just this heartbreaking stuff. And there's been loads of things like that. A lot of people seem to be checking out, many more seem to be going insane, and that's all part of this consciousness shift, which I've no doubt is actually happening. And like I always say, feck 'em if they can't take a joke, maintain your sense of humour and everything will be okay, because those who have no sense of humour or try to take it away from you are the ones who are the cancer in society. There's no song in their hearts, and their job is to make sure that there's no song in your heart too, because misery loves company. And speaking of company, I'm delighted to have you all back here. I've had some great times lately. I had a fantastic Christmas and New Year, except for afterwards when I found out I'd lost some people. But up until that point, for me personally, it was great fun, and I hope it was for you too. We're currently on the 2nd day of February 2020, so it's 02/02/2020, which is a palindrome, which some snotty-nosed tit reminded me the other day is a word that's spelled backward the same as it's forward. Well, thank you very much for that, Tarquin. Your degree in gender studies really has paid off, and you've taught me so much. Now, please get me my latte. Anyway, here we are again, the Velocity of Now. The website is www.mossuponstones.com. If you want to do me a favour, buy me a book. And guess what? I've opened a Patreon account because dozens of people have told me to do it. And the reason why is all the money in the Patreon account, link down below, will go into making better films for the Beyond 313 YouTube channel. You've seen some of the work I'm capable of with the Sintra Code, and also Liber Providence. I know I can go even further. My Demons documentary is heading towards 1 million views. I know I have the potential to reach a large-scale audience because I can sell strange and alternative information in a unique way, because I'm the kind of fella you meet down the pub, and I don't have any pretentious beliefs, or I don't think I'm here to save anybody but myself, because in reality, other than me and my loved ones, you're on your own. I'm only interested in saving us. Apart from that, hey, if I can help you, give you information to save yourself, that's good. But that's all you're getting from me, okay? But I think that's a worthy thing. So if you want to support my filmmaking, look at the link below. Patreon, I think, is a great idea because it actually encourages artistic, creative output, very similar to how benefactors and people who took care of artists in the past did before. We live in strange times. My work, my day job, is really seasonal. It ends at Christmas and doesn't start up again till nearly summer. And so I'm basically living from hand to mouth at the moment. I would like to have some more money to go out and film some megaliths and some interesting stories and do other things like that, and also have a few quid to fix cameras and stuff like that. And so if you want to support that, you can. If you don't, that's okay. Life will go on, and we'll all be happy. And well, you know, those who want to be happy, and I'm certainly very happy now, because I know life is not about being happy all the time. Not all the time. And so it's good to have that perspective. It's good to be that. I don't really put all my hopes into my persona in front of the public, because I have loads of friends and people in real life who don't even really know me from any of this. So it's sort of like, this is like a stage. This is like stepping on a stage for me, although my beliefs are all sincere and I carry them with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all my life. It's just that I don't bore people I know in real life with them. It's horses for courses with everything in life, and this is my passion rather than my lifestyle. But increasingly it tends to become both at the same time. They become fused in together at the same time. But we're living in interesting times. A friend of mine this morning just told me that they had a dream about the planet Orion. Sorry, this Orion. Already making mistakes. Already making mistakes. And that's a good chance for Alex Jones. Planets are going gay and becoming stars. Yeah, stars are becoming gay because of the chemicals in the water. Wake up, incoming chem bombers, wake up, yeah. Stars are going gay, planets are going gay, yeah. Galaxies are going transgender. It's hardcore stuff, man. What are you gonna do about it? Warning, incoming chem bombers. Buy my extra male vitality pills. God love him, Alex Jones. You can't, he's hard to dislike when he's that funny. I'm getting whoop. Yes. Anyway, yeah, so my friend was telling me, before I channeled Alex Jones, that they were having dreams last night about the constellation Orion, and asked me, what does it mean? Now, Orion's interesting in the fact that it's not one of the constellations of the zodiac, but it's a very profound constellation nonetheless within human cultural development. And as in terms of, we had people discovering that, I think it was Robert Bauval, that the three belts of Orion line up with the Great Pyramids at the Giza Plateau. And also in Orion's belt you have the Orion Nebulae, which is a gigantic gas cloud where stars are born. It's like an incubator of stars. That's if you believe stars exist, of course. They don't! Shut up, Panto. And the Betelgeuse, or Betelgeuse, or whatever you want to call it, is in the upper left-hand corner of the constellation when viewed from Earth. And cosmologists and Scientologists say it's very possible, astronomers, that it's very possible that Betelgeuse, or Betelgeuse we're going to call it, will go supernova as it's dimming rapidly, which is seen as a exquisite precursor to stars going supernova. The red giant begins collapsing in on itself and then goes supernova. I certainly hope it happens in my lifetime, because I've never seen a supernova star, and it's an event I've always wanted to experience for my own eyes. What makes this so interesting from a consciousness point of view is the fact that the constellation Orion and that star are so significant within Western, particularly cultural development. What effects will it have on consciousness? As you know, I'm totally subscribed to the concept of as above, so below. And the same thing with this constellation. What effect will it have on us? Orion the Hunter. Now, I was going to make a separate psychic weather video on the coronavirus,
But instead, I will tie it into all this. As you know, I've been telling you to observe the psychic weather. Most times, I don't get it or realize it until after the fact. Sometimes I get it beforehand, but I do pay attention. Now, with this coronavirus thing, it's been spread, we are told, by human contact with bats. I don't know how it was for you, but my old Facebook account, before it was deplatformed over a racist incident against me, I might add, which some purple-haired freak in community standards, no doubt, assumed I was making about others when I was reporting a racist email that was sent to me. And a handful of psychotics seized it as a chance to escape from the fact that their husbands and their partners have incredibly small penises and their lives are profoundly unfulfilled. And therefore, I got thrown off for that. But before that happened, my social media feed was flooded. And when I say flooded, I mean non-stop with images of bats. Images of bats, cute ones, bats being, and this has been on for about a year now, bats being fed with, eyedroppers full of milk, cute bats, interesting bats, cuddly bats, I am the darkness, give me a cuddle bat. It was non-stop, and I'm sure you noticed it too. And then lo and behold, we have this latest pandemic potential, assuming it's true, coming out of China again, based on human interaction with bats. Now, I'm assuming that means eating them, or I know that bat's net soup is a popular thing in Asia, which is one of the more strange things they eat. But again, I'm not here to judge cultures. It probably is something like that. And we all know that bat droppings actually make people insane. That's where the term batshit crazy comes from. But guana, I think it's called. But I think it's safe to assume that they weren't having sex with bats. I don't know how you would do that. I'm sure someone has tried. I'd imagine it's particularly challenging. Just even beginning, the thing is going to be upside down to begin with. But there's loads of freaks out there who'll try this, and real batty boys, ha ha ha. But so yeah, well, China, strange. Once a magnificent culture, once on the forefront of everything, destroyed by Buddhism and then communism. And this, particularly communism, if you look at China today, that's what the SJWs, the people who deplatform my Facebook account, that's what they want for the world. There's no difference between killing your baby daughter because she's no good in that society and correcting your child's agenda in the West because you think that you're supposed to do that, because the state says so, because dogma decrees it, because culture decrees it. If you want to know the world that the SJWs desire for us, you look no further than the People's Republic of China. That's exactly what they want for us. Now, this is a great tragedy, as we all know, in so many ways, because a once great culture who gave us, so much is reduced to building cities that look spectacular from a distance, but they're empty and they're crumbling and falling apart, that they're ripping up ecological and natural landscapes to build transportation networks just so they can show off in front of the world how great they are, and who put baby girls down food compactors in kitchen sinks because they don't want to take care of them. But you still got to have them iPhones, and that's the thing, isn't that the paradox? Isn't that the SJW for you? They will turn a blind eye to all that stuff, as long as they can still stand outside the iPhone shop when the iPhone 57 is released. Interesting, isn't it? That's what you're dealing with. And this is why I have to bring comedy into a lot of things. That's because the world is if you know, I said today that in many ways, and this includes probably people in China who are preventing themselves from going mad from what their government is doing to them, that the dissociation is in many ways a survival mechanism for the psyche. It really is. This is why, you know, we have even things like hobbies or, you know, extreme sports. And this is why I don't put down people who watch sporting games and things like that, go to big sports events, because if you have to sit down and face the world for what it is, like even here in Ireland, you know, like you meet people who play the game and their lives are utterly shit. They live in some suburban area. They commute 2 hours of work today. They get married to some wagon they were with for 10 years because it's time. They have the mandatory 2 kids. They're exhausted from doing school runs. The house will cost 3 times the mortgage, or 3 times what the mortgage is by the time they pay for it. So they were working all the hours God gives them, commuting all the hours that God takes from them, in order to give the bank 2/3 of their lifetime income. And they do this without thinking, and this is why they go mad for sports and things like that, because that dissociation is the only thing that stops them from going insane. And I know in China, just like people are anywhere else in the world, they will have their own levels of dissociation. What that is, I don't know. I don't have a Chinese consciousness, but I'm sure it's just as profound and no less degrading than what people in the West go through in order to survive. Dissociation can be your friend, but I'd much prefer people channel it into things like hobbies and creativity than doing things like, you know, standing online for iPhone 25 or wrapping their hopes up in a foreign sports team or a team on the other side of the country that they only know from telebox, you know, TV. And so we have this disease outbreak in China. We just don't know the truth. We don't know how many have died. There's, you know, that's a society, you know, where the poorest are just not forgotten about. You know, they don't even bury them. I know this sounds harsh, but that's the truth of it, because they can't. They just literally dispose of them any way they can. So you'll never know. In fact, the ones who probably died, they can confirm that they died of the virus, are probably the upper middle class. And we hear these ridiculous stats that they have very little flu in China. That's absolute lies. They just hide the stats. They don't keep the records we do. Look at their population. How can they? You look at India. Amazingly, India is far more efficient in things like that, even though on many levels, in terms of what we consider to be functional and dysfunctional in the West, they're probably dysfunctional on a basic social level in many ways. But in terms of actual administration of their country, in terms of democracy and stuff, they seem to manage much better. And so again, it's a cultural thing. It's how you exist. I shouldn't say this, but I get the impression that many people in China are just desperately trying to survive. That's the function of their lives, is to try and survive. And that's not their fault. That is the system that was first given to them by Buddhism. Now, you hear a lot of people in the West saying, oh, Buddhism, it's not a religion, it's a philosophy. Well, Buddhism doesn't really teach you to do anything with your life. Buddhism, basically, if you look at Dharma in Hinduism, Dharma is about fulfilling your life in terms of doing things. If your Dharma is to be a computer programmer, that's your Dharma. If your Dharma is to be a professional soccer player, that's your Dharma. If your Dharma is to be a farmer, that's your Dharma. Where the Buddhist ideas of this, in terms of the Buddhism that came out of Hinduism, that was reversed into something like, it doesn't matter. That life doesn't matter. That you just basically exist, and your Dharma is just to exist. Now, this perfectly dovetailed into. This is why, like, these people. This is why the Western commies love Buddhism. That's why they love it, and they love Buddha. I mean, half the SJW women look like Buddha anyway. Just put a purple wig on the Buddha statue, and that's your typical community standards enforcer on Facebook. And speaking of which, you know that guy who ran the hex, the binding spell on Trump. He looks like a Buddha too, but he wears lipstick and has a baseball cap with boy written on it. Remember when I said that, not a video I did a while back on Open Source Occult TV, sorcery plus idiocy equals catastrophe or something like that? Well, apparently after him going on TV and hexing Trump, just as expected, if you hex someone who hasn't done you any personal harm, look what happens. Apparently he set up a GoFundMe account. He can't even pay his bills anymore. He's destitute. He's destitute because, but Trump was bad. No, but he didn't attack you personally. He didn't write your name on a book and go, I'm going to get this bastard. He didn't do that, right? He didn't do that. These are the only people you have the right to hex, and even then you shouldn't do it if they have kids. You put down, or loved ones or pets or anything. You don't do that. It's only if they wrote your name down on a list, and that's the only people you can curse or hex. Or not that on the list, but the targeted you specific for no other desire than to hurt you for no reason. Now, where was I? Yeah, so Buddhism then led into communism, and the Chinese version of communism was extreme. It's extreme, and you had Mao in his little red book, and then from that, later on, when that began to deteriorate, they had the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Now, that was basically all the SJWs, the students, killing everybody. Just killing everybody, just like the Khmer Rouge were all students. This is why you don't trust university and college students, because they're very easily weaponized into mass murderers and killers, because they have been programmed. This is why they all join cults as well, because by the time you get them to master's or PhD level, these people are utterly incapable of thinking for themselves, and they always need a professor or a lecturer to tell them the truth. And when they leave university, the professor or the lecturer becomes the current commissar, Communist Party official, supreme leader, glorious leader. And that's what happens. This is why they want everyone in college these days. This is why, not only because they can bankrupt you and keep you in debt forever, but it also stops you from thinking for yourself. That's why I said if you're a young person now, go to trade school or join the military. You have a better chance of becoming an independent person in the military than you ever will going to be getting a university degree in anything that's not technical. So if you're studying to be a doctor or a dentist or an engineer, that's fine. But if it's something like philosophical or even many of the sciences, you will be turned into a robot. You will be turned into a robot. And then you will embrace things like globalization and so on. The other great news is that Brexit happened. Why is it great news? Because the European Union is closer to communist China than people want to accept. An unelected oligarch who wants absolute and total control through bureaucracy. There is not one case in history where this is shown to be benevolent and beneficial to the population. Not one. And of course there are people who say, well, the EU is different. It's not different. It's not different, because such structures, unless you have, say, a benevolent dictator, which has happened a few times in the Roman Empire, relatively benevolent, and has happened in Persia as well, and a few other places, you'll get a good few years of a great emperor or a great single leader who will look after you. But that usually happens in cultures where the king is determined by a warrior mindset. For instance, Julius Caesar fought alongside Mark Antony, and I think it was the 13th Legion, in Gaul, defeating the Gauls. He became Caesar on the battlefield, just like Alexander the Great. Someone who's only known bureaucracy all their lives is not the same type of person. They become detached from ordinary reality. This is why I hate Donald Trump so much. Donald Trump is not a bureaucrat. He's a business person. He's not one of them. He can get things done without having to form a committee to fob it off on. Because when you're a CEO of a company, the book really does stop with you. Now, if you have a board of directors of a company, it's very similar to a a bureaucratic situation whereby it becomes a kind of a hive mind at the very top that then becomes detached from the humanity of what's below it. Where if you have a single leader, and you're all going to say, but democracy, no, listen to me, just a benevolent leader, or a leader at the top, a business type person, or a Caesar, or even a Napoleon, an army general. Look at Patton. You can get things done. You can get things done in a way that benefits society in terms of creating a sense of real destiny for the people. Something that's beyond basic drudgery. Something that makes achievement worthwhile. That you're not just a slave, but the people at the top of bureaucracies, and also company men who've worked their way up into the boardroom, they don't have the drive of someone who loves what they're doing. They have the drive of someone who's going through the motions. And then they'll put everyone underneath them through the motions. That's why I think, like, the only real system that can ever work for humans are warrior kings or warrior queens. That's the only thing I can see can actually work, get things done. Democracy simply is just not viable. I mean, it throws up very funny things now and again that's laughable from the point of view that it disrupts the zeitgeist, the election of Donald Trump, and this week we got Brexit finally went through. And it's only because it only horrifies the bureaucrats. Now, who can remember the portents of doom issued by the media over what would happen with Brexit? The same with Trump. Mass race wars, mass deportations, gay people would be locked up in concentration camps. Everyone would be forced to worship the Bible. Everyone would be forced to, in the case of England, eat suet pudding and this is why I'll say it again, they hate Donald Trump for the same reason they hate Brexit. This is why. Because it takes the bureaucrat out of the situation. So I can remember there's a magazine here in Ireland run by, I don't know if he's involved anymore, a guy called Vincent Brown, who's a socialist intellectual. I actually was interviewed by him once years ago when I worked as a consultant, and he didn't know about anything. Nothing. And the magazine, when Brexit first was voted in, there was a picture of 1950s Britain showing all this, or older, like 1930s Britain under the Great Depression, showing all squalor. And it said Brexit, back to the future. And there are people that actually think that the minute Brexit happened, it returned to season 1 of Coronation Street, or back to the 1930s. Back to Charles Dickens times with like Fagin and the Artful Dodger and people begging on the streets. This is the level of intellectual intensity that universities push out these days. And these were the people who were not only pushing this idea, but believing it, absolutely believing it. Because they have no concept of anything beyond the formula which is put into their minds by the control system, which ultimately exists to validate the same prejudices that they put into their minds to begin with. Now you think about that one. That's so interesting. It's because that's why this is the mainstream media, the higher education system, actually all the education system. It just exists just for this purpose. Like, I'll give you an example, right? The entire fishing industry in the UK was devastated by the European Union. Thousands upon thousands and millions of factories and millions upon millions of jobs were outsourced out of the UK directly because of EU directives on privatisation and movement of free goods. Now you would think, well, that's a great thing. I can now get Ponce de Rhone cheese, goat's cheese in my local supermarket. But it also allowed the factories that were in your neighbourhood to go to central China, because they weren't only directives on movement of goods and services within the EU, but globally. Likewise, the people who are screaming We got to get British Rail back and take the trains operating companies down and put back British Rail and nationalise the railways are the same ones who said that if Brexit happens, the NHS, the National Health Service, will be shut down. This is a colossal contradiction in terms. Outside the EU, the NHS has now never been safer because it was EU directives on privatisation of public industries and bodies that gave the Tories and then later Labour under Tony Blair the means to demolish British Rail and have a situation now where if you want to go from Reading to Birmingham like I did and buy a train ticket on the same day, a one-way ticket cost £120 to go 70 miles. That was the EU who did that. Because the EU demolished your fishing industries. The EU exported your factories. I'll give you an example of one. Here in Ireland we had a massive industry built upon peat, as we call it, turf. The centre of Ireland is full of enormous peat bogs. It is our main natural resource on the island itself, apart from agriculture. This stuff burns very efficiently. When dried and put through a milling process, it burns as well as coal. It also retains heat. Because of EU directives on carbon emissions, they're saying you can't dig our peat bogs anymore, even though it's a fully renewable resource. Sphagnum moss is a fully renewable resource. So what do they have now? You have massive peat-fired power stations in the centre of Ireland that once produced enormous kilowatts of electricity for the country. Next to them are hundreds and hundreds of miles of renewable peatland that can be harvested, dried and burned, but they're not allowed to do it. Instead, shiploads of, wait for it, coconut husks, yes, coconut husks, are imported from the Caribbean and from Africa and used to be burned in these power stations. So no one's being employed locally except to drive the truck from the docks to collect the coconut husks from Africa and from the Caribbean and to burn them in peat power stations that have peat bogs left next to them that can't be touched because the EU said so. Another one was, we once had, until 20 years ago, an enormous sugar industry in Ireland. Sugar beet goes very well in Ireland, and we used to produce vast amounts of our own sugar. We're not allowed to do it anymore because the EU said it was unfair to sugar producers in the Caribbean and in Africa. So the EU, which is supposed to look after the affairs of European farmers, European consumers, puts people out of work, shuts down farms, closes down centuries-long industries in order to import shiploads of sugar from the Caribbean and from Africa. And that's why people voted for Brexit in the UK. They didn't vote because they were racist. They didn't vote because they were xenophobic. They didn't vote for Brexit because they were close-minded numpties who know nothing of the world. They live in the age of the internet. The mainstream media cannot control them as well as they once did. And as a result, they start to think for themselves. Just like the Rockefeller guy said in the US Senate, the biggest mistake they ever did was giving the people the internet, because now they can't control them. He didn't even say it cryptically, he said it directly. Directly. And this is being echoed all over the world now, with the exception of two countries, the United States under Donald Trump and the UK under Boris Johnson. But the names are irrelevant. That's another one. They voted for Brexit because of Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson. That's not why they voted for those people. They did not vote for names. They voted for solutions to the quagmire of, without any public consultation, Angela Merkel flooding Europe with 1 million extra immigrants with no background checks in order to fulfill a philosophical mandate on cultural changes within Europe to try and demolish national sovereignty in order to streamline not European integration but globalist integration for no other purpose than not to bring humans together, not to have a Coca-Cola commercial, not to have anything like that, but to harmonize the humans into the Borg, or the blob would be a better thing, so as to sell them products that don't have to be diversified. One iPhone to rule them all, one search engine to rule them all, one social media to rule them all. With this way, nobody has to diversify products for regional areas, and profits go through the roof. Silicon Valley tech people get richer. Apartments in San Francisco and in the Bay Area become impossible for people to afford. And then we have a beginning of a new feudalism. We're already there. We're in a new feudalism. And when people like me point this out, it drives them insane. Because I deliver it in clear, non-pompous language. And because I'm a pagan and an anarchist, I don't sit there and say the solution is communism. The solution is socialism. The solution is, liberalism or Christian democracy. I say the solution is inside yourself. Feck him if you can't take a joke and just do it yourself. And this is really why you have these people living miserable lives who sit in groups, places like Facebook, monitoring comments, with their biting their bottom lip, trying to adhere to a polemic, and all they're doing is robbing the song from their own hearts and making legends of people like me and others they've banned, because they cannot do it to the effective levels they once can. Because as Rockefeller said, they made the mistake of getting the internet too out there and too in the hands of the ordinary people. While at the same time, there's no doubt that the internet is diminishing. There's not the same amount of sites as there was. I've heard people say, oh, use DuckDuckGo. Doesn't make a difference. What search engine you use 20 years ago, the internet was 15 years ago, 10 years ago, the internet was a Wild West. GeoCities, Tripod, Yahoo, endless web pages. People don't have it anymore. There was always a big thing on Alex Jones and all. We're going to have Internet 2. Internet 2 is what you have now. They've made it impossible or difficult for people to maintain websites, because why pay, IP charges and hosting charges when you can get stuff for free on Facebook? But then they can control it. You see how it's all done? So God knows many millions of sites have vanished in the last 10 years. You go to the GeoCities archive and it's quite frightening. It's there. You want to see the Orwellian memory hole? There it is. Millions of people all over the world who had all kinds of sites and all kinds of hobbies and their own opinions when you used to explore the internet. And that'll be, I'll use DuckDuckGo. Listen to me. The sites don't exist anymore. They're gone. They've been memory holed. We just have a very blank. You think like the early days of cable TV in America, it was a free-for-all, where people were making their own programs. Ham radio, right? Same thing. The internet was in that same thing. There was absolute anarchy and chaos, and it was magnificent. It was glorious. It was magnificent. And now it's like cable TV today. 57 channels and there's nothing on. Well, it's 900 channels and there's nothing on. They've done that with the there's nothing. So you're kind of forced into Facebook. The last great place of it is YouTube. There's still tremendous amounts of freedom on YouTube, surprisingly. Now, they may use the algorithms and the other things, mathematical tricks, bookkeeping tricks almost, but like with digits, to feed to make sure that the digital gin doesn't let you see what's below the main stories, the big players on YouTube. But even that they're not, it's still a fair amount of freedom on YouTube. To Google's credit in that regard, or YouTube's credit in that regard. And that's why they deplatform people. I can totally understand them deplatforming people who spew the most disgusting racial hatreds for real, or who are doing awful things like you've seen some of the channels they've taken down on Google, on YouTube. It was amazing they lasted as long as they did. All kinds of cretins and pedophiles and weirdos. I have no problem with that. But you cannot suppress someone just for having a philosophical idea. You cannot deplatform them. And we are the deplatformed. But we're also being charged by it, because what you hate, you feed. We are the deplat. That sounds like what's that song by Live Aid? We are the world. We are the deplatformed. We are the band. We are. Hold on a second. Okay, let me see if I can do this. I'll try and ad-lib this. Give us your fucking money. Give us your bleeding money. There comes a time when we all must be deplatformed, and the purple-haired freaks control our lives. There are people dying 'cause they cannot read my jokes. With me, the greatest Facebooker of all. We can go on pretending day by day that community standards really gives a shit. There's a guy buying tampons who thinks he's really offended. But the fact is, he's just another day. We are the band. We are the deplatformed. We are the ones who get thrown off Facebook because someone has a thorn in their hole. God has shown us that chaos is the way, and that we all can't remember the words of this fucking song. Okay, I'll do a DM one. Oh, sing in your heart if you know someone else has been demonetized. What the fuck was that? Joel's making up these words, and here comes more purple hair dye for you. I'm making this up as I go along. I don't remember the words of the song. All I can see is Michael Jackson's hand. Ooh, wearing a diamond glove. 'Cause that morning it was probably up some kid's bum. We are the band. Nah, all this Michael Jackson did. You just remember, there's nowhere we can fall. You singing about that I can be bent to when we file a complaint as one. We are the band. We are the platform. I'm getting all emotional here. We are the ones who pissed off some freak with purple hair. There's a choice you're making to save your own lives. It's true, we'll have a better day if we have unbridled chaos. We are the band. We are the platformed. Make a brighter day on your social media. There's joy to make it. Yeah, you're saving your own account. It's true. We make a better day for you and me. We are the band. We are the platform. We are the ones who lose our accounts and the world becomes darker. But you fought for me and told Facebook the truth. But the fuckers befriended all my friends and removed all my posts. We are the band. We are the platform. We are the ones who make your social media worth spending your time on. I finally got the one. We're the joyful making. We're saving our own lives. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, first hour up already. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Got a bit crazy there for a while, but I feel like a prisoner liberated from a prison camp where all the guards are fellas who wear tutus, buy tampons, and have terrible taste in music. Normally, I wouldn't have a problem with them choosing to live how they live, but just don't be telling the rest of us how to live. See you in the second hour, and feck 'em if they can't take a joke.